It's now 16 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. You're on the Now Morning Show on this Monday morning. I'm Kimberly D'Souza. Now, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the increased price of freight and shipping rates, and of course, the adverse weather conditions are just some of the reasons many supermarkets and manufacturers are using to justify its increase in prices to customers. But these prices are having varying effects on the consumer spending habits and, of course, the economy. And so to discuss these effects is economist Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon, who is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Arjoon, good morning. Always a pleasure to have you here on the Now Morning Show. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, Guy. Good morning. And thank you for having me on the show. Good morning to all your viewers as well.
Of course.
I'm doing quite well.
Nice. Quite well, given the circumstances, of course. Of course, from today, Nutrimix will be...
Certainly, given the circumstances.
Yeah, of course, from today, Nutrimix will be increasing their prices.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, Dr. Arjoon, I mean, you have been seeing the press releases. Of course, Nutrimix is actually increasing their products this morning. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about, first of all, is that we should use alternative products. But my question is, isn't it going to be the same effect after, let's say, some years, that these alternative products will also increase as well, the price actually, since demand for it might increase over time?
Well, when we're talking about alternative products, and you would have seen quite a lot of mention of corn flour, of cassava flour, etc. One has to really consider how pragmatic doing so is at this particular stage, given that one, it is going to, you can't just flip a switch and decide to go use an alternative, especially when we would have gone, I mean, wheat flour is something that has been used for centuries. Our culture, our palate is used to wheat flours. So this is not going to necessarily be something that we can just switch to very, very quickly. And also one has to consider how pragmatic it is from a cost of production perspective. I mean, the cost of production right now for every single commodity, every single item we utilize on a daily basis, including especially what we eat, is quite high. So is it pragmatic in that switching to these particular items is going to necessarily help to drive down the overall cost of living? And not just that, we also need to look at a healthier lifestyle, healthier ways in which we eat as well. This is what we need to consider, is from a cost perspective, first and foremost, from the economic standpoint, is it going to be feasible? Is it going to make sense from a cost perspective? And I think at this particular stage, the answer is perhaps no. We're seeing that now. I just wanted to delve into something really quickly here. We're seeing that the price of wheat across the globe has increased. In fact, it would have increased by as much as 66% since February 16th. Now, we tend to purchase all our wheat from North America, right? But because of the war between Ukraine and Russia, of course, North America is now selling to countries that would have previously relied on Russia and Ukraine. Of course, there's a global shortage, but the shortage highlights that we are quite fortunate that local manufacturers here would have secured adequate supplies of wheat for the rest of the year. So at least given the reports of what they would have indicated to us, we should be good from a wheat security perspective or flour security perspective at the very least for the rest of the year. Now, to me, that begs the question: it's possible that some of these supplies of wheat would have been secured through orders by these manufacturers that were placed earlier this year. And if they were placed earlier this year, it may have been placed at lower contractual prices, right? So that begs the question to me: are they currently or about to sell flour at a higher price, which was actually produced using the wheat that was purchased at a pre-arranged, at a contractual lower price previously several months ago? You see, now the US and Canada, they have started to sell wheat. In fact, not started, several months now, they've been selling wheat to certain countries at a lower price. This wheat was part of the stockpiles that they would have been holding in storage in order to meet some of the additional export demand that's called upon them from other countries. Now, if we manage to get wheat in the recent past at a lower price relative to what is being stipulated by the overall market, then I think that flour companies or flour manufacturers should start to reconsider the price hike at this stage, or at the very, very least, the magnitude of the hike should be lower than what they're proposing. I mean, they're proposing as much as 33%. The magnitude of this hike, I think they should at this stage try to reconsider it.
Now, Dr. Arjoon, you actually hit the nail on the head, because I was about to ask that as well. If we locked in our prices for the rest of the year, then how are we seeing these increases? But on the flip side, I know that you mentioned the increase in shipping costs. So is it that the consumers are feeling the cost of the increase that they themselves have to pay when they also have to export as well? Is it that we have to pay for, some of the added expenses that they have on their end?
Well, certainly, and it's not just the flour manufacturers. Remember, if you look in the grocery basket, the cost of every single item you purchase has gone up. More so these items that were imported, that are imported. And I mean, we are very import intensive. We tend to import on average about $6 billion worth of food items per year. And I mean, let's face it, the amount that food importers are going to have to spend in this year is likely to be much higher. Now, what's been happening is that the shipping rates, global shipping rates, are higher. But is that the only factor that is causing the increase in prices? The global shipping rates are higher because of a surge in the demand, the surge in orders for food items and many other items all across the world, and has been creating a shortage in containers and of course, greater usage of shipping vessels all across the world. Then there's the cost of international transportation because fuel prices are higher. Not to mention, you're still finding a lot of delays at international ports. Ships are missing their schedules, etc., because of these delays. And of course, when it comes to food production, agricultural production, not only is the cost of fertilizer higher, but you find that in many countries, because of weather conditions, there's a drop in the level of production. So if you take wheat, for example, what's compounding the shortage of wheat globally, right? What's compounding the effects of the Russia-Ukraine war on the supplies of wheat is that there are declines in production in countries like Australia, in India, in Morocco, in certain parts of the US, in certain parts of Europe as well. And in addition to that, there are countries that are starting to ban or limit the amount of wheat and other agricultural produce that they're exporting. Case in point, India has a total shutdown of wheat exports, when just a few months ago, India was actually thinking about trying to be the new wheat basket, the new bread basket of the world, by increasing their exports of wheat by about 7 million tons. And now they've in fact shut down the amount, all of their exports of wheat, given how bad this crisis is.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Arjoon, quickly, what sort of effect this is going to have, especially since I want to throw in the fact that the public servants are actually having discussions about salary increase. So we have the increase in food, and then we also have a possible increase in salary. What sort of effects can we anticipate with this?
All right. So first, I just want to point out here, right? Now, some supermarkets, in all fairness, they are at this point in time and in the very near future, hopefully could last as long as possible, they're absorbing the higher cost of flour from their supplier, right? They've indicated that some of them have indicated they're not increasing their prices at this particular stage. Now, it is also quite possible that some others may not even increase by a full 28%. Now, this is going to cause some good price competition here in the retail flour market. It's possible to cause some price competition here because those lower priced supermarkets, they could draw some customers away from the higher priced ones, those that are charging higher prices. And it also might result in those who increase their prices to subsequently lower it over time, right? That's one possibility. Now, some households, many households, as a matter of fact, have started to switch to lower priced brands of various items, and that is going to include flour as well. Instead of buying a more expensive brand, they could start buying a cheaper brand. In fact, many have started buying the cheaper brands in recent times. And of course, when you start reducing your demand for the higher priced brands, that over time could cause their prices to either stay the same or if not drop. Now, there's also a possibility that some supermarkets, even though they're not increasing the price of flour, instead, they might try to hike up some of the prices of other items to compensate for the increased costs that they're paying to the flour supplier. But
Dr. Arjoon, now as we're on the topic, Now, as we are on the topic of that, of the competition, because I see where you're going, what about bakeries? Do you think people are going to go to smaller bakeries now rather than buy
Certainly,
or
in
purchase
fact,
breads in the
yeah.
grocery?
Yeah, in fact, this is something I mentioned over the weekend on the Express. The fact that Kiss has decided to hike up their prices as well. And this is what troubles me about these large companies. You're hiking up your prices at a time when there's a lot of vulnerability amongst households. But these companies, their asset base and their cash reserves, their financial backing is very strong. So can they not hold some restraint at this point in time in the interest of the wider economy? But this could present some opportunity with respect to these small community bakeries, and that if they continue producing their bread items and their flour-based items, it could present some good price competition here, where if they charge prices lower than Kiss, it could definitely encourage some households to switch from buying the Kiss bread products and other flour-related products from Kiss and start going to these smaller bakeries, thereby bumping up the sales revenues for these small community bakeries at the same time. And again, forcing Kiss to re-examine this pricing structure that they're looking to embark on at this particular time. I mean, yes, we have to consider that companies like these are in the private sector. They're accountable to their shareholders, and the whole purpose, their main goal is to maximize wealth for the shareholders at this point in time. But I mean, these are very dynamic, very special times we're living in. I don't think this should be their sole focus. We have to consider that there are many households in an increasing level of vulnerability, growing poverty levels in the economy at this particular stage.
Of course. Dr. Arjoon, I want to go back to the question about the increase in prices and, of course, the increase in possible wages, because we know the public servants are going before the CPO and they are negotiating that 2%. What effect is this going to have on the economy? And can you also link this to inflation? Because you have about a few more minutes before we wrap quickly.
Right, certainly. Now, whenever you have a rise in the cost of living, a rise in the cost of living, and the fact is that public servants have not received a wage increase for several years. I think the last time was in the vicinity of about 2013. So it's no wonder that they're clamoring for higher wages at this point in time. But we also have to consider the flip side to that, which is the level of productivity. You see, when you increase wages without a subsequent or forthcoming increase in productivity at the same time, then there is a risk that you can actually bump up inflation levels, price levels, because the purchasing power of these individuals, their households, etc., would have gone up. So their level of spending would go up, and that will have these effects for boosting up prices at the same time. So when you increase wages overall, it could very well come down to a concept that we call money chasing inflation. Okay, but that could be stymied greatly if there are concomitant increases or parallel increases in the level of productivity within the public service and by extension within the rest of the economy at the same time. Because of course we rely on the public service, the business community relies on many services, many avenues that the public service tends to provide in terms of providing your licenses, in terms of getting special permits, etc. Various procedures for getting things done, getting your goods cleared by customs very quickly and inexpensively as well. Of course, we have, for many years, we've had several problems as pertaining to customs, as it pertains to having some substantial delays when we're trying to get our imported raw materials, machineries cleared quickly so that it can facilitate continuous and efficient productive business operations. If we were to re-examine these problems, the high levels of red tape in the public service, especially those that stymie efficiency within the private sector, then I think a wage increase could in fact not necessarily need to or lead to an increase in prices as the justified fare is.
Nice. Now, Dr. Arjoon, we can go on all morning, but unfortunately our time is up. But it's always a pleasure to have you on the Now Morning Show just to give us a taste of what we're seeing and, of course, how we can sort of manage with the increases and, of course, the inflation that we're seeing. So I hope we can have you back on soon again to get a bit more into the macroeconomic side.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that was Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon, who is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, just sharing a bit about what's happening globally, of course, what's happening locally as well with our increase in food prices. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Of course, we have new music coming from an artist. Stay tuned.